Helldivers, what is up? We just got a new patch and I wanted to cover some of the highlights to get you ready for your next drop. Let's start with the weapons. Nothing too crazy here. The R2 amendment did get its ergonomics increased from 35 to 50, so it should feel a lot more nimble. The Peacemaker, the old standby, actually got a decent array of improvements. Starting mags from 4 to 5, spare mags from 6 to 8, damage went up by 10, and durable damage also went up by 10. We also got a couple changes to armor passes. Now, we've seen Arrowhead start to hybridize armors a little bit, taking pieces from other passives and putting them into ones that maybe felt a little lacking. This trend seems to be continuing. So integrated explosives now also has that grenade +2 buff, that attribute enhancement that we've seen with fortified and engineering kit. And unflinching also got that same treatment. It has increased armor rating from 25, so that's a lesser version of extra padding, and markers placed on the map generate a radar scan every 2 seconds. So this is cool. I mean, that's great that armor passes are being made a little bit more potent. However, my thought here is I wish that they would simply make the baseline mechanic more potent itself, right? Integrated explosives, like when you died and that burst happened, it just always felt really underwhelming. Okay, maybe it doesn't need to be a hell bomb, but I think it should be a lot more impressive since you only get the benefit when you die. And then there's unflinching. The main reason that this wasn't selected is because the baseline mechanic felt broken, or it felt like it didn't really work. When you got shot, you still seemed to flinch, at least enough to miss your shots. I would have been happier with just making this really stand out in that you basically did not flinch at all when you got shot, instead of sort of picking parts of existing mechanics, whatever parts Arrowhead had lying around, and kind of throwing it into, holes in some of these armor passives that existed. But what are your thoughts on that? Next up, this is for all of you who really wanted to see silencers in the last set, or the initial set of attachments. I can tell you that stealth has become a little bit more viable. So enemies will no longer automatically detect you when you're near Terminid areas. So for example, spawners, stalker lairs, or simply inside Terminid locations. Before, there was an auto detect, you would come into that location and they would all descend upon you. Now it's more based on line of sight. So you might want to take another look at the scout passive when you're on Terminid missions, since that might be a bit more viable than it was before. Alright, let's talk about the bad guys, as there has been some changes there. The Harvester is going to be a little easier to take down with anti-tank weapons, particularly when you're aiming at their head. The Factory Strider did lose its Achilles heel, so I did feature this in a couple of videos, most recently with the one today, Spartan Dives on Bugs, so it can no longer be one-shotted with the recoilless when you aim at the feet. Now, it will very likely just take 2, as it says that its health on its feet has only been slightly increased, but yeah, it's going to be not as convenient as it was before. But this is what we do, we adapt. Okay, the other bit is the Leviathan. Alright, projectile damage was reduced from 1500 to 350. Now, it's still going to one-shot you, but it won't one-shot exosuits and FRVs. Now, the main complaint I think that I've been seeing from the Leviathan, obviously there's a lot of people that like it, there's probably a lot more that hate it, and it really comes down to the fact that there's very little counterplay, right? Especially in areas where there is very little cover, as we're seeing them now. Yes, you can use something like the recoilless. You blow off one of its fins, and then that damage section does become vulnerable to heavy, weapons with less armor piercing, so that does encourage a little bit of coordination. But the fact that it feels like you're getting sniped from half the map away, and there's very little that you can do in that moment, I think is leading to some of the frustrations that we're seeing in the Leviathan. Again, something I'd really like to hear your comments on. Okay, other than that, I can give you a little bit of tips here on these new missions that we're seeing. So as you can see, the Terminid have now infested our megacities. So yes, the CF soldiers will be there for you when you're fighting the bugs. Now, on that mission where you're destroying these infected towers It's good to note that you can shoot at these tires from miles away, as you saw in this video, so that makes it a lot more convenient. Now, let me give you a warning here. You thought stalkers were tough before. I gotta tell you that they're even tougher now, as their camouflage works even better in these tight corners with all this gray around. So really make sure that you tune up your volume, that you can hear their tall tail, you know, I don't know, growl or slither or whatever you want to call that noise that they make, because they are even more of a problem than they were before on these maps. That's all that I got for you, Helldivers. Now keep in mind that the Arrowhead team is going to be going on a summer vacation that does span several months here, so we're very unlikely to get anything significant until, I don't know, maybe August, September. So we'll probably get some of the trickles of, you know, new war bonds and, you know, some minor changes like this, but I would say don't expect anything seismic for quite a while. Until then, happy diving, y'all.